Rebuilding the American dream, the difficult decision for homeowners after the Lilac fire.
I'm horrified to stand here as a student and see police brutality occur in somewhere that is supposed to be a safe and inclusive and thriving environment.
A community stunned by school violence caught on camera. The students walking out in protest today and the questions that led up to the incident.
We, black, white, Latino, Chicano, Asian, brown activists can vote him and his cronies out.
The march moving people around the world. San Diego stepping into the fight for D.C. and women's rights. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabolsi. Congress sped toward reopening the government today. Both the House and Senate passed a temporary funding bill. It moves on to the president's desk. Senators hammered out a deal today. GOP leaders promised to take up immigration and other contentious issues soon.
Leader McConnell made a clear public commitment on the floor of the Senate. We're not going to be able to move forward if we don't trust each other. So I'm going to trust both that Leader McConnell will keep his commitment about a floor vote by a date certain, and that we now have a window of opportunity where this group has to show that it can work together and build a bipartisan consensus that produces a product worthy of time on the floor.
Well, I mean, we did talk to the Democrats and said that we feel that we have a commitment, and I did go back to the leader's office and said that stronger language would be helpful. And he did give stronger language on the floor today, particularly about the fairness of the process.
This time Republicans actually stayed united, but the media love to write the story, love to broadcast the story, that any shutdown is Republicans' fault. That is a natural media reflex. It's actually, I think, one of the reasons why we saw a shutdown. Because I think Chuck Schumer and the Democrats believed they could shut the government down, and reporters would dutifully blame it on Republicans no matter what the facts were.
California Senators Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein protested the deal. They say they voted no because there was no guarantee of a legislative fix for the so-called Dreamers. Federal funds are now available to help San Diegans affected by the Lilac fire. More than a month after the devastating fires, a FEMA Disaster Assistance Center is now open. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more.
Here at the Rancho Monserrate Country Club in Fallbrook, lots are in various stages of cleanup, and homeowners are having to make the tough decision whether to rebuild or sell.
Everything in my life is a rebirth.
Charles Coppa is standing in front of what used to be his home.
When you've had everything taken from you in 77 minutes for a 77-year life, you readjust yourself.
Coppa rented a mobile home here and lost everything in the Lilac fire.
I thought I was dead in the water with my substantial losses.
Today, Coppa went to seek financial assistance. Over the weekend, FEMA set up shop at the Rancho Monserrate Country Club.
They just want to know, what do I do next? What kind of help can you give me?
FEMA workers are at the country club until Wednesday, helping people file claims for assistance.
It's all based on an individual family and what their situation is. It's based on insurance and their ability to remove back into that house and how quick they can get back there. A lot of these people have already gotten their property restored, but their only insurance only covers so much.
A month and a half after the devastating fires, the community here is slowly rebuilding. Crews have been out in full force repairing and cleaning up the charred landscape. Some people will be replacing their homes, but Coppa isn't so sure.
I'm not ready for that at the moment because I think there's going to be a long-term effort to fix this place back up.
The FEMA Assistance Center plans to move to Bonsall Elementary School on Thursday. They say the recent government shutdown has not affected their operations.
We're still here because we're considered essential and as part of a disaster, and so we'll be here until further notice, but right now we're okay.
The deadline to apply for physical damages with FEMA is March 16th. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The race for Congressman Darrell Isa's seat is getting bigger. San Diego County Supervisor Gaspard has jumped into the race for the 49th Congressional District. Her campaign consultant confirmed that to KPBS. Voice of San Diego reports Mayor Kevin Faulconer and City Councilman Scott Sherman have endorsed her. Voters elected the Republican supervisor 2 years ago. Before her run for supervisor, she was mayor of Encinitas. A colossal waste of taxpayer dollars. That's what State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez-Fletcher says about gun buyback programs that give vouchers to stores that sell guns. She introduced a bill today that would prohibit public agencies from doing just that. Gun buyback programs are typically sponsored by local police departments. A voucher or gift card is usually given in exchange for guns. AB 1903 would also prevent a person who gets a voucher for a firearm to then use that voucher to buy a new gun. About 100 Helix High School students walked out of class this morning after seeing cell phone video of a police officer body slamming a 17-year-old girl on campus on Friday. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks says the students had a list of demands for their school and the police.
The students, along with adult community organizers, are calling on the La Mesa Police Department to adopt special de-escalation training. It's already reassigned the officer seen in the video slamming a handcuffed student to the ground twice. Neither the student nor the officer have been identified. Police say the officer used force because the student tried to free herself. Protester April Laster says regardless, it was excessive.
So you mean to tell me that an adult male police officer could not restrict a teenage child, because let's keep it real, she's a child, without letting it get to that level of intense violence?
Police say the girl suffered minor abrasions. They said she refused to leave campus after a teacher found pepper spray in her bag and sent her home. That piece of the story has protesters like Bishop Cornelius Bowser calling on the school to reform its discipline policies.
Give them a voice during the encounter. And if someone is feeling and saying that they're not being treated right, they feel like they're being treated a certain way because of their race or what have you, you have to listen to that. You just don't ignore it and kick someone off the campus and call the police.
Representatives from Helix Charter High and La Mesa Police say they're taking appropriate actions to review the incident, and the officer will no longer work on school campuses. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Nearly 5 million gallons of sewage spilled into the ocean in Monterey County, prompting officials to close several beaches along the Central Coast. The massive spill happened early on Saturday at a wastewater treatment facility. The cause was reportedly failure of part of the sewage filtering system. At least 8 beaches remain closed. Dental benefits for adults with Medi-Cal coverage have been fully restored. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says there's a lot of unmet dental care needs among the Medi-Cal population.
State health officials say less than a quarter of adults on Medi-Cal saw a dentist within the last year. Denti-Cal benefits were slashed during the recession and only partly restored in 2014. Dr. John Luther is chief dental officer for Western Dental, the state's largest provider of Denti-Cal benefits.
Many of the adults that qualify for Denti-Cal cannot afford to pay out of pocket, so they simply go without, or they have services that just get them by.
Denti-Cal patients can now get a wide array of services, including checkups, partial dentures, and root canals. The state has also increased rates for many procedures. Officials hope that will encourage more providers to treat Denti-Cal patients. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
At the beginning of 2018, some low-income San Diegans started getting more federal assistance for rent to live in more expensive neighborhoods. But while a recent court ruling could have given them even more, that additional money is likely not coming their way. KPBS anchor Ebony Monet talks with reporter Claire Tregesser, who has been following this story.
So Claire, to start, give us a big picture summary. What's happening?
Right. So there's a new method for determining how much federal assistance people get on rent depending on the size of their family and income level. It offers more money to people who want to live in more expensive neighborhoods. The old method meant that people with housing vouchers were segregated into the least expensive parts of a city, and San Diego is taking a middle road between the new method and the old.
So this type of federal assistance is called housing vouchers?
Yes. People apply for housing vouchers based on their income and the number of people in their family. They often spend years on a waiting list, but they eventually receive some federal assistance to pay their rent. And this is where the change comes in. The amount they had been getting was calculated using the median of all rents in the city. But the Obama administration decided to change the system for 23 cities, including San Diego. They said instead of using just one rent to calculate the amounts for the entire city, they would use zip codes. So each zip code would have a different median rent. So if a family wants a housing voucher to live in a more expensive neighborhood, they'd get one that's worth more. And I talked to Parisa Ijadi Maksudi, who's a San Diego poverty attorney, and she says the point of this change is to desegregate cities.
The Obama-era rule was targeted at 23 metropolitan areas, including San Diego, because we're so highly segregated and because there's so many rental units available in higher opportunity areas. This new method of determining rents would open up those areas so that families no longer have to live in segregation and poverty.
So for many people listening at home, this may be complicated. Can you give some examples?
Right, yes. So take a family that wants a one-bedroom apartment. Under the old system, they'd get about $1,000 a month towards rent. But if they wanted to live somewhere with higher rent, they would need to make up the difference. Under the new system, if that family wanted a one-bedroom apartment in, say, Claremont, they'd get about $1,400 a month instead of $1,000 a month.
So specifically, what's happening here in San Diego?
Right. So this actually is not happening in San Diego. I talked to Rick Gentry, who's the CEO of the San Diego Housing Commission, which oversees the housing voucher program locally. And he says while San Diego was included in the 23 cities where this program was going to be tried out, San Diego is actually exempt and doesn't have to use this zip code based rule. So instead, at the beginning of the year, they started their own system that aims to be something like a middle ground. So they're dividing San Diego neighborhoods into 3 tiers: low income, middle income, and high income. And they give different voucher amounts for each tier instead of using every zip code as a different amount. So using the example of the family living in Claremont, under the San Diego system, they'd get about $1,200 a month, which is more than they'd get under the old system, but not as much as the $1,400 they'd get using the Obama administration rule.
So why doesn't the San Diego Housing Commission want to give vouchers based on zip codes?
Right. So I asked Rick Gentry, and he says it would be too complicated to determine different amounts for every zip code. And he also said that it amounts to social engineering.
I understand what HUD was getting at. With their new rule, they're trying to help people move into non-traditional areas. I believe in providing opportunity and choice for people. I don't believe in social engineering. And I think what the HUD system did was to cross the line from help and assistance to social engineering and trying to predicate where people live.
So, Claire, is there any chance that San Diego will eventually switch over to the zip code voucher system?
It doesn't seem likely. I checked with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and a few lawyers, and it looks like San Diego has a contract with HUD that makes them exempt from following this zip code-based rule.
KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This Navy ship is now calling San Diego home. The USS Portland arrived a few hours ago. The ship comes to San Diego with a crew of 371 sailors. Once it's loaded up with Marines, it can carry well over 1,000 military personnel. Its primary job is to transport Marines to the place they will be deployed. It will be commissioned in April in Portland, Oregon. Mild winter weather on tap for the work week. Mark Mancuso has more in tonight's forecast.
Here's a look at our weather headlines. In the short term, cool and dry. A little warm up the next couple of days, and the rain very scarce. As we check the satellite radar today, all is quiet. Up the road, we did see some showers with a weakening front in central California. They're fading away, and we're back to more dry. And as you can see on the drought monitor, we're dry and still running into that moderate drought. Any significant rain in the offing? The answer is no. Tonight, sweatshirts needed, mainly clear skies. We'll cool it off to about 47 degrees. Temperature tonight at Mount Laguna down to freezing. Campos at about 37. Borrego Springs, 41. Ramona, we should see a low of about 36, pretty cool. Oceanside's 38 and Long Beach about 45. For tomorrow, high pressure builds overhead. Our flow will be offshore, so an offshore breeze. Temperatures will rise a little bit. Lots of sunshine. Chula Vista's at 73. Ramona's at 74. Long Beach 77, quite comfortable. And Mount Laguna will be a cool 52. Campo at 63. Checking ahead, any big storms in the offing? The answer is no. System will slide through here later this week, kind of like last week. And that will cool us off on Thursday. It'll be breezy, a couple of showers around. But then we're back to dry weather, rising temperatures as we take you into the weekend. As we check out that 5-day forecast for the inland areas, nice and warm the next couple of days and a little bit cooler. Temperatures will dip into the 60s. Chances for rain very small. As we go to the mountains, we'll be looking at plenty of sunshine. Temperatures in the 50s. Cooler as that system moves through on Thursday. Over the weekend, temperatures will start to rebound. And as we check out the desert, well, we're sunny, nice here on Tuesday. And temperatures will take just a little bit of a dip later in the week, not by much, and then starting to rise again as we head into the weekend. I'm Mark Mancuso for KPBS News. Back to you, Maya.
California remembers the landmark decision that set the course of women's reproductive rights in the United States. Lawmakers joined abortion rights advocates today at the state capitol to honor the 45th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. The ruling made abortion legal. Planned Parenthood leaders say changes at the federal level challenged women's access and placed reproductive health care at risk. Anti-abortion activists were also there. They called the decision an assault on civil rights. First, they march, then they vote. The Women's March returned this weekend across the country, but also in San Diego.
Freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes I know.
We march for our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our aunties, our sisters, and our elders who marched for us. We march so our children will not have to.
Resist and persist, just one of the many messages carried this weekend. Officers say 37,000 people joined the march starting at Waterfront Park on Saturday. Earlier today, I talked with KPBS social media strategist Laura McVicker, who was there. Laura McVicker, it's great to have you here. You were among tens of thousands of people at the march on Saturday. What was it like to be among so many people?
It was, to be honest, it was actually really overwhelming. I've lived in San Diego 3.5 years. I've never seen that many people in such a small space. So it was overwhelming, but it was encouraging just to see a lot of people just kind of peacefully out there, just uniting and together.
Well, you talked to a lot of people while you were out there. What was kind of the unifying idea of why they were out there, and what were they trying to accomplish?
There were a lot of issues that people just looking at their signs and looking at what they talked about. There are many issues that that were touched on that they wanted to protest. Several people came out to protest or encourage the protection of dreamers. A lot of people touched on healthcare, just concern over that. Definitely the Me Too movement was apparent in signs, but I would say the overarching feeling, just talking to everybody and seeing all the signs, was more a protest of the Donald Trump presidency and a lot of wanting to encourage other people to vote in the 2018 midterm election.
We, black, white, Latino, Chicano, Asian, brown activists, can vote him and his cronies out.
In fact, that was the theme for this year's protest. It's Hear Our Vote, and that was to encourage participation in the midterms.
Yeah, exactly. It was. There was just a sentiment of if you're not, voting with your ballot, then what is your voice here for? We want to rally to have our voices heard, but we also need to be putting that forth by our vote, and that this 2018 election is very important in getting leaders that you stand behind and making sure your voice is heard through those leaders.
This is what we do now. We do not stop. We do not go back. We march forward.
How many people were out there this year in comparison to last year?
So this year, the police estimated it at 37,000, and last year, the estimate was between 30 and 40,000. So very similar numbers. I know the organizers had estimated it as a lot larger of a crowd. They estimated it around more than 100,000, which was similar to last year. So it was a very similar size as last year.
And we've been talking about the last year and how the climate has been so divisive. Would you say that the Women's March has been something that has been unifying some people while isolating others?
It obviously was. It did feel, the Women's March did feel very political in terms of a lot of the people that were out there were Democratic, were opposing the Trump presidency. So in that sense, it was, I guess, divided. But the thing that I saw was just so many women out there trying to rally to get other women to run for office and to encourage other women to have their voices heard at the ballot box. So for women, and definitely maybe the women out there, I think it was unifying. But I guess for if you're looking at politics and party lines, then that is where it would be polarizing.
Laura McVicker, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the government shutdown ends. What's in the short-term fix and what stands in the way of a longer-term deal? Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A centuries-old coffee tradition from the birthplace of coffee itself is thriving at Ethiopian restaurants and cafes. KCTS producer Leila Kazmi introduces us to the people brewing up cups and conversation in Seattle.
When I first came to this country, I went to the coffee shops and I see here more like cafes. You get the coffee and then you sit. Sometimes you don't sit, you just go with the coffee. That was a little bit different for me. If you want Ethiopian coffee, it's a process. It takes time. We call it Nubuna Tatu. Nubuna Tatu means come and have coffee with us.
We drink coffee in back home like 3 times a day in ceremony. Before you leave the house, you have breakfast and the coffee ceremony. Everybody sit together, eat and drink coffee.
The coffee ceremony is set up on the floor most of the time. Has to be on the floor. Sometimes they have green grass cut, fresh green grass cut under the cups and around the house. Sometimes they spread it all over the house. That's to show that how you connect with nature. Having the ceremony is really to socialize. Let's socialize, let's talk, let's just be one. Sometimes, we all have issues and come and share your whatever. If you have a business, I want to know about your business. Sometimes we want to know what's going on back home, how's family doing, and probably want to send a little money. That's where you get all these issues solved. This is from Yirga Chefe. The Yirga Chefe coffee is smaller and very green.
So the first thing is we have to wash the coffee and then roast it.
You can see the color is changing from brown to dark, and the aroma comes in there, the smell of it. When you grind it also, you have to really know how to grind it. You don't want to grind it too much. The jabana is made out of clay. And the jabana, the way the shape is very interesting. It has a little handle, a little neck to it. I think the jabana with clay pot is more tastier than the ones you get here. The coffee ceremony is most of the time served with something. It can be popcorn. It can be some grains. Sometimes they make bread that is baked. There is a small prayer always goes with it. Families to be healthy for the year to be the best year for us for harvesting. Muslims do it, the Christians do it. It's more like a community type of thing. Holiday is kind of interesting to me most of the time because that's like the coffees every hour goes on and on, you know, because there's no work, people coming to your house, there's more coffees making, you know. We get like 6-7 times a day.
Everybody's coming from everywhere and just sitting there and drink coffee. We enjoyed that.
If you want to come here coffee, think of it like half an hour is gone, okay? And then after that, probably they'll serve you food too.
And here's a look at what we are working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, the group who save people from falling into poverty, we will examine the new social safety net. And on Midday Edition, the next great play may come from the mind of a San Diego teen. We'll have more on the California Young Playwrights Contest. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. And as always, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.